Welcome to the Voice Science Podcast, where we explore the science behind singing and teaching. I'm Josh, the founder of VoiceScience.org. I've been educating singers and teachers for over 13 years. Here you'll learn how the voice works and discover practical tips to train it more efficiently. Today we're tackling the question, what is breath support? By the end of this episode, you'll know the truth about breath support and walk away with 3 simple exercises to help you master it. Let's dive in. If you look around the internet, you'll find a near infinite number of opinions on what breath support is and how it works. This is because breath support research is still evolving. I like to define breath support as the voluntary physical activity of regulating exhalation to manage subglottal air pressure. To put that a bit more simply, breath support is how we manage the airflow and pressure that is needed to sing efficiently. It's a physical action that we choose to control. That leads me to our first myth about breath support, that we need to push more air to sing louder or higher. I think most singers naturally infer that to sing louder or higher, we need to push more air. It's actually true that higher notes and louder singing requires more air pressure. But, as it turns out, your body is already providing the pressure that's needed most of the time. A little bit of voice science nerdery. According to a 2020 study by Trasser et al., singing happens when subglottal air pressure, the air pressure below the vocal folds, is between approximately 5 and 35 centimeters of water. Maximal inhalation produces approximately 30 centimeters of water of recoil force. That means that without applying any additional exhalatory force at peak lung capacity, you are already in the maximal range of subglottal pressure for singing. While technically, yes, more air pressure is required to sing louder and or higher, the majority of the time you have all the air pressure that you need. For just a bit more context, another study from 1993 by Fizz et al. On the maximum respiratory pressure in trumpet players. They found that average healthy individuals can produce up to 204 centimeters of water in respiratory pressure, and trumpet players can produce up to an astonishing 288 centimeters of water. That's a little more than 8 times as much respiratory pressure as the maximum that is required to sing. The second myth about breath support is that you need to expand the abdomen as much as possible to get as deep of a breath as you can every single time. Relaxing the abdominal muscles allows the diaphragm to descend further, increasing the volume of the inhalation. That's a fact. The practical application for this is a bit more nuanced, though. In classical singing, where you have consistent long lines, no amplification, and large performance spaces, there is a need to increase the volume of air. However, in contemporary commercial styles like pop, rock, musical theater, etc., phrases are typically pretty short, lasting only a few beats at a time between breaths. Huge breaths bring challenges that are just not necessary. To look at the science, we turn to physics with Hooke's law, named for the British physicist Robert Hooke. Without going too far down the rabbit hole, the more air you blow into a balloon, the more force the balloon is putting on the air inside. The balloon, in this case, is your lungs, bones, muscles, and organs. Reducing the expansion to the minimum amount required makes the act of singing easier. One other thing to consider is that low diaphragmatic breaths also cause your larynx to lower. This is super helpful for classical technique and styles, but not typically very helpful in contemporary commercial singing. Myth number 3 is one that I hear all of the time, and you probably have as well. Sing from the diaphragm. There is hardly ever a new student in my studio who has not heard, tried, and been confused by trying to sing from the diaphragm. The diaphragm is the primary muscle of inspiration. It is a large, domed muscle that forms the barrier between the thoracic cavity and the abdominal cavity. When the diaphragm contracts, it descends and can cause a number of other structures to be displaced. It displaces the chest, ribs, abdominal viscera, and even more can be displaced depending on the activation of other muscles. This movement creates a vacuum that draws air into the lungs. When the diaphragm relaxes, it and the displaced bones, muscles, and organs attempt to move back into position. This creates pressure on the lungs, causing air to be forced out of the body. The detail I want to draw your attention to is that exhalation occurs when the diaphragm is relaxed. The diaphragm is not an active participant in removing air from the lungs. Now, even if it was, the diaphragm is itself an involuntary muscle. That is to say that we have no direct control over it. Yes, you can think, I am going to breathe now, and it happens. But you cannot actively isolate the diaphragm and exert direct control over it. This myth came from how classical technique tells us we should be inhaling deep breaths with an expansion through the abdomen. And there are many benefits and downsides to diaphragmatic or belly breathing while singing, and we will cover these in another episode. Okay, so if it's not the diaphragm, I don't need massive breaths, and I am not forcing air while singing, what am I doing? The goal of breath support is to delay the natural breathing process by controlling and extending the exhalatory process. To do that, we are going to focus on inspiratory muscles that can be controlled: the external intercostal muscles, the pectoral muscles, and the lats. When they contract, they expand the chest cavity, slowing the collapse during exhalation. 3 exercises that I have had success with in my studio. The first is by making fists and squeezing them into your ribs. The act of doing this will engage the external intercostal muscles, the pectoral muscles, and the lats. I find this exercise helps students discover these muscles as it tends to provide a strong sensory feedback and can be completed while singing songs or exercises. The second exercise is about feeling the expansion in the thorax. While taking a large breath, raise your arms up to make a circle in front of you. Try to hold the expansion while you exhale, lowering your arms, and repeat 3 to 5 times. Finally, the third exercise can be really helpful if you're having difficulty with breath support on ascending leaps. Doing a squat or a plie on the high note stabilizes the body, engages the majority of abdominal and thoracic muscles. Over time, the goal is to be able to engage these muscles, the external intercostal muscles, the pectoral muscles, and the lats on demand, and to varying degrees of effort. Let's recap what we've covered today. Breath support is the conscious act of regulating exhalation to manage subglottal air pressure. Contrary to popular belief, you rarely need to push extra air for louder or higher notes. Your body naturally provides plenty of air pressure. Taking an overly deep breath can introduce unnecessary tension, especially in shorter phrases common to musical theater or pop styles. And the ever-popular phrase, sing from the diaphragm, is misleading. The diaphragm works involuntarily during inhalation. So we focus instead on the muscles we can control to stabilize our exhalation. And finally, remember the 3 exercises. Fist and ribs to engage the external intercostals, pectorals, and lats. Arms up to feel the expansion. And squats or plies to stabilize and feel support on those high challenging notes. In the end, breath support is about efficiency, balancing air pressure with just the right muscular engagement to sing freely and consistently. Thanks for tuning into the Voice Science Podcast. I hope this episode on breath support gave you some valuable insights. If you found it helpful, share it with a fellow singer or teacher. Don't forget to join me next time when we'll dive into the science behind belting. A style that's full of misconceptions, but one that can absolutely be mastered with the right tools. In the meantime, be sure to visit voicescience.org for more tips, research, and resources to help you train your voice more efficiently. Thanks again for listening, and keep singing.